Hey, if you needed more motivation to have the best DC summer ever, this is it. District Bridges' Summer Bucket List runs June 15th to August 15th across DC. Here's how it works. Earn points and climb District Bridges' leaderboard by supporting local businesses, attending cool events, and crossing things off your summer bucket list. Top players can earn up to $250 in local business gift cards just by visiting pools, exploring museums, and sipping frozen cocktails. It's the ultimate DC staycation. Show some love for the city we call home. Join the summer bucket list and celebrate what makes DC truly special. Sign up now and track your progress at districtbridges.org/DC Summer Bucket List. Today on CityCast DC, DC's electeds are about to start hashing out the budget. And for weeks, we've been talking about how the mayor is trying to turn DC away from its progressive trend of the last few years. Today, we're wondering if the progressives actually have any muscle to push back. Plus, the end of the H Street Streetcar and the problem with Gordon Ramsay's visit to DC. And in a members-only fourth section, we're looking at the downturn in spending on going out to eat and whether it is yet another sign of economic apocalypse for our city. I'm here with Axios' Junaid Dill and my CityCast colleague, Julia Caron. Today is Friday, May 30th. I'm Michael Schaefer, and here's what DC's talking about. Hey, Junaid.
Hello, my friend.
Hey, Julia.
Hey, Mike.
So you guys, it is, it's a season that City Hall nerds get super excited about. It's budget season. The mayor has released a budget. This gets treated as sort of like a tablet being handed down from the mount, but it's actually just a proposal for a law about how we're going to spend our money. And that law has to get passed by elected officials who sometimes have a different agenda, and they're going to spend the next few months sorting it out. Junaid, you watched this. You wrote a great column months ago, sort of the end of the progressive era in DC, noting that after years of growing budgets and ambitions for all kinds of social services and infrastructure improvements and other sort of big government things, the city, in a lot of different ways politically, was tacking away from that. So I noticed in your piece about the rollout of the budget, there's a lot of members of the progressive bloc on the city council saying, various parts of Bowser's proposals around, reducing spending on things are an outrage and we're going to stop it. And I'm curious, do you think that's going to happen? Do they have the juice to do it? And are there dogs that aren't barking here?
Yeah, I'm curious about that as well. I mean, the progressive era, if it's over, this is the pro-business era that the mayor is trying to bring into DC. Her budget, which is what the left calls just this trickle-down economics budget, is trying to focus on incentives for businesses, helping restaurants by getting rid of Initiative 82, which the restaurants hate that, the tipped wage initiative that voters approved, and all these other things to cut red tape, like making construction easier. And now the question is, as you're saying, the council has the budget, and they can zero out things that they don't want. They can get rid of this tax credit for tech companies that's in the budget if they don't want it. But they can't really add programs. So they need to keep this budget balanced at the end of the day. Whatever they remove, they need to sort of move around and shuffle to make the dollars and cents balanced. And that's going to be really hard because of the financial situation of the city. This is kind of the mayor's Doge budget because she came in starting this year not knowing what was going to happen. The economy was slowing down, but Doge just took a wrecking ball to it and incinerated a lot of jobs. And this is the budget that's come out of that. She is betting big that this pro-business budget will make up for possible 40,000 jobs being lost, that it will make up for the federal spending by helping private sector businesses grow. And the council is very wary of that, especially progressive members. They are skeptical that you can give tax incentives and other pro-business things and just expect it to all trickle down. So the muscle, is it still there on the council to re-engineer this? we can go line by line. Like I think RFK Stadium looks like it's going to pass though, and that's a big part of that.
This is a place where she wants to add money.
Yeah, the juxtaposition is you're cutting 25,000 people from Medicaid, you're moving them into other programs, but you're cutting them from Medicaid. The city wants to build a stadium, and the mayor's office will say there are different budgets. There's a capital spending project budget, and there's the operations budget. But for regular people, that looks pretty hard to swallow.
So for people who are not as like intimately familiar with the progressive bloc of the council, who are the members of that progressive bloc and what have they said about the mayor's budget proposal?
There are a few stalwarts. There are a handful of members who are very, I don't know, progressive in that they champion programs that are data driven versus sort of just pro business and hoping for business growth. But they've lost some of their chief spokesperson, I would say. Former council member Alyssa Silverman was very good at organizing this block. And that was kind of the reason I wrote that column, is they kind of lack a central figure. But one of the members, Councilmember Charles Allen in Ward 6, who was against the new RFK Stadium, came out and said a lot of green energy investments are being zeroed out. And he's very focused on bringing back some of the renewable energy programs that the mayor's budget is trying to get rid of. For example, she wants to pause some clean energy requirements for the construction sector to make it easier to build more buildings quicker. And we're still waiting for many other members, but they're concerned about Medicaid. They're concerned about certain programs being cut, not next fiscal year, but in future fiscal years. This is a 4-year budget. And so what the mayor has done is she keeps funding, for example, the child care fund that helps child care workers get better wages. She keeps that for the next fiscal year, but it's cut in the next coming 3 years. And so that is a fiscal cliff that worries a lot of people.
The progressives' contention is, Mayor Bowser has said, look, we are in a real economic crisis brought about by DOGE, brought about by the Trump administration, this sort of internal ballast of the city economy. The federal government is changing form or possibly going away to other parts of the country, and we got to react to this. The progressive knock on that is actually this is stuff you always wanted to do for your business friends, and you're just using this as an excuse. But I guess that
I think that's true. I mean, I think that is kind of her instincts.
So I guess the question is, I mean, it's early days yet, but they got the votes.
Do they have the votes? I mean, it's early days. We're just finding things out still. Like the mayor, by the way, wants to get rid of the sanctuary city law, which is a whole nother thing. And that was hidden in the budget, basically. So we didn't find that out until the rollout on budget day was over. So we didn't get a chance to ask her about it. So we're still finding things out. It's too early. The council is going to take a month, 2 months to really dive into the effects of these cuts. Everything from your local recreation center project to a schools program to a crime fighting initiative. There's still a lot in the details still to be surfaced. So we're not hearing super detailed pushback just yet. The pushback, okay, it's one thing to put out a press release. It's another to find a way to actually fix what you're complaining about in the budget and put it back in if it was cut.
Just from my vantage point, which is not, in the front row at the Wilson building like you, I don't get the sense that opponents of some of these cuts have yet mastered the narrative that, Bowser's narrative is quite simple, right? Which is that we have been completely hosed by the Trump administration and we are going to be lucky to get out of this with home rule intact and our finances above water. And we're going to have to do some things that we all hate doing in order to get there. That's leaving aside the veracity or the good faith of it. That's a pretty convincing narrative. And, I feel like the people on the left who want to, maintain some of these funds that the city has created, maintain some of these requirements around green energy and stuff, are going to have to come up with like an equally powerful and rather simple narrative to keep those things in place. And it's just rhetorically, it's going to be a tough task.
It is going to be a tough task. This is a budget that the mayor might run for a fourth term on. She didn't answer that question. It was thrown out. Is this the budget you're running on for reelection? But that decision will come soon. She might have to decide this summer. Can she run on that message that you're saying, which is succinct? It's basically a message of, look, as a household, as a city, we can't spend outside of our means. And so we need to bring in more money. And what we have right now is not working because the feds are leaving town. She wants to grow revenues again. She doesn't want to do that through tax increases, which she thinks will just cause more people to be turned off and leave the city. She wants to stay relatively competitive within Maryland and Virginia for taxation purposes. And can she run on that message? And is there a competing vision from the progressives that is also succinct and a story that can be told easily? Because right now, I think one of the big problems is they don't have a chief spokesperson. And it's very hard to make that message if you're not clear.
The DC Fiscal Policy Institute, which is a sort of left-leaning think tank, their statement had this line about, our city and our country are witnessing a massive upward redistribution of wealth. And sort of tying it to stuff that's going on in Congress, which in the case of like the Medicaid cuts, like those are going to happen in all 50 states too. That seems like a fairly effective. I mean, we've had this thing in the country where people can be quite conservative at the local level while still being quite liberal at the progressive at the national level. And tying those two things together seems like like in a fairly limited bag of tricks, that seems like a fairly good one.
One person who might run for mayor is Robert Wade, and he might want to look into that. The DC Fiscal Policy Institute, like the one you just mentioned, has called this a trickle-down strategy from the mayor. And that could have salience. That's an easy thing for people to grasp. I think a lot of people on the left just instinctively no, that's not a proven strategy for growth.
So I know Mayor Bowser has set this deadline of July 15th because she wants to coordinate with the commanders. What sort of changes, since you're on top of this, Junaid, what sort of changes do you see happening by then? And do you expect this budget to get passed by July 15th, or are they going to eke into August?
The budget will probably pass before August, if not early August. But it's not clear even now for me to say, is the RFK Stadium package going to pass along with the budget, or will it have to take some time into the late summer, maybe even early fall? The council chairman says there's no way we can pass the RFK Stadium deal by July 15th. So I guess we're going to see.
Wait, is there stuff in there? Like if I was proposing like a big complicated budget, I would probably put in a few things that were like, all right, I know they're going to reject this. And then like, I can be like, all right, I'm going to compromise on this thing and make it look like the other guys won one. There's stuff like you mentioned, this $52 million venture capital fund, which I don't really even understand. Are there things in there that you think she'll be happy to give on?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, that's why it's a challenge for the progressives, because there is sort of this onslaught of things that they don't like in the budget. So how many of them can they get rid of? Initiative 82, that's going to be a big test. Will progressives take that out? I'm talking about the overturning of Initiative 82. Will progressives remove that part of the budget? There is that incentive fund, which is, I'm not quite sure how much of it's privately funded versus public dollars. It's a mix though for tech companies. There's a tech tax credit that the council overturned several years ago because the city at the time found that it was unproven to be working. And why do we have this giveaway for tech companies was basically the takeaway at that time. And now it's back in the budget. Maybe that's something she compromises on. Sanctuary City, there's a provision that removes local cooperation with ICE that guts the Sanctuary City law. That could be something the progressives will want to fight back on. But there's so many of these. So I think some of those will be knocked down. I think it's hard to get rid of all of them, though. And so you are left with a relatively pro-business pivot, I think.
All right, well, there's no dissent against CityCast's budget, which is why we want to encourage you all to become CityCast neighbors It's only $10 a month. You get to support our podcast, help keep us in the business of connecting you to our city by talking about news and things to do and the culture of Washington and the feeling of life around here. We really hope you'll join. Julia, remind me how to join.
Membership.citycast.fm. Very simple. $10 a month or $100 for the year. You get ad-free listening, which, yes, ads help pay the bills, or you could help pay our bills. Either way. We have members-only events. We had one at Dirty Habit a couple months ago. People loved it. And overall, you get to support a show that you care about and be a good neighbor.
I don't know about you, but this summer I am looking to travel figuratively as much as possible. You know, save some money and hassle, but still have fun, enriching cultural experiences without leaving the district. That's why I am so excited about Mosaic Theater's production of Andy Warhol in Iran, a fictionalized account of Andy Warhol's real-life trip to Iran. This play is more timely than ever, raising striking questions about art, celebrity, and revolution. Andy Warhol in Iran runs at Mosaic Theater May 29th to June 29th at the Atlas Performing Arts Center. Get your tickets now at mosaictheater.org. Hey folks, every summer it's hard to decide what kind of vacation do you want to take. Do you want a relaxing natural getaway or do you want a new cultural artistic experience? Luckily this summer you don't have to choose. The Williamstown Theater Festival runs July 17th to August 3rd among the beautiful Berkshire Mountains in northwestern Massachusetts. It brings over 130 artists to the stage for nearly 100 performances. Discounted hotel rooms are available now. Go to WTFestival.org and immerse yourself in theater this summer. That's WTFestival.org. Hey, so listen, this is related to the budget, but it's also its own weird history that I was sort of obsessed with this week. The mayor, among other things, has proposed ending the H Street Streetcar, although she's not quite said it that way. She says it's going to be replaced with a next generation streetcar, which is a bus, an electric bus, but a bus.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, when you say next generation streetcar, do you just mean like a trolley? Do you mean an electric? But like, what does next generation mean?
I feel like I should break that out, like for my children. You know, when I'm bringing bad news, like the car you wanted is going to be replaced with a next generation car, a bike,
A bike, a scooter.
But look at the streetcar. It already. I mean, I was just reading back through the history of it, and it already feels like a kind of like a time capsule from a different era in our national history and in our city's history. That it was, you know, there was streetcar service for decades and decades and decades. It ended in the 60s as the culture turned towards automobiles, and reviving it was like a dream. And in the Obama years, when there was a lot of stimulus money bouncing around, a lot of ambition to do green things, there was movement towards and some federal money to help a lot of cities build light rail and streetcars. DC got in on that. It was you know, the culmination of a couple decades of planning and hoping. And quite quickly, things started to go wrong. Like there was just endless delays about should there be overhead wires, because there was laws preventing that in the name of the sanctity of the l'enfant plan of the city. There was like literal sizing issues where they'd gotten these streetcars from a Czech company that were European standard size, which assumes that there's a dedicated lane, but these streetcars were supposed to run in traffic. So they were like, if a car was parked, they would not be able to get around it. There had been ambitions of running these streetcars all around DC, going to Georgetown, going across the river, having an Anacostia line. Eventually it was just out H Street from Union Station, and then not even quite Union Station, because there was a hiccup over how far west on H Street they could go. So you'd get off and supposedly seamlessly into Union Station, but you actually had kind of a little bit of a walk. And then you'd get to the far end of it at Oklahoma Avenue, and you literally could look across the Anacostia and see in the distance the Minnesota Avenue metro station, but it didn't go there. And there was no Georgetown line or Anacostia line or and it wound up being, I think, like $100 million a mile, because it was only 2 miles.
That's correct. It was $200 million total.
And, you know, the argument among people who supported it, and I really like streetcars, the argument was, look, once you put rails in the ground, it's permanent. It can't get taken away like some bus line or something like that. And it was sort of a version of if you build it, they will come. there's a lot of people who feel kind of wistful about the end of this because the idea of, restoring, like DC had like it's third biggest streetcar network in the country at the end of World War II. And the idea of restoring a system where there's sort of permanent infrastructure showing that people can be whisked around town without having to have a car, that was something a lot of people really believed in. I don't think at this point, given everything, all of the scaling back and frustrations and so on, I don't think there's a whole lot of like really active, full-throated defenders of like, God, we got to keep that streetcar running on H Street. But it's I don't know, it's sort of a bittersweet moment, and also like, can you believe that it was just within the last decade and a half that people were thinking actually about, let's build a big ambitious thing and make it happen, and there's money to do it.
Here's my thing. Did either of you ever ride that streetcar?
Only once or twice, maybe.
I took my dad there because he liked streetcars, and then we rode it, and it was free. Yeah, it was. I did not. I mean, look, I don't live there, but so it was not a practical part of my commute. So I took it essentially as a tourist. And the thing is, when you stand on H Street, there are these buses, the X buses for now. They'll have a new name on June 29th. And they continue past Oklahoma Avenue, and they cross the river, and they go to, neighborhoods where people live. And they are much just, I don't have data on this, but just when you watch the cars and the streetcars and the buses going by, they are much more crowded. And because there's just a much bigger world of places you can go.
I imagine if you're Metro, you coordinate to have some flavor of bus line that runs all along that H Street corridor from Union Station and then crosses the bridge, right? Like that's got to be the thing you do.
DC killed this circulator bus line last year. This too, the streetcar is not, if you look at it, it's not a part of the Metro system, Metro Bus, Metro Rail. It's DC owned and run. So DC is going to be behind these quote unquote next generation buses. But it is that too, the idea of like, well, we've got this regional metro system, but as a city, we can step up and fill in some gaps that the region won't do, but we want to do for ourselves. That too feels like a time capsule from a more optimistic era.
Like DC is getting out of the bus, but like they got rid of the circulator. They still want to run the next generation streetcar, which is a bus. And it's crazy. This was supposed to be a 37-mile streetcar network when it was originally proposed. I mean, the maps of it are crazy. It goes everywhere. Georgetown, and all over the place.
Well, 2 out of 37 is not bad. Actually, yeah. 2 out of 37 is quite bad. But Junaid, I mean, as far as you can tell, in the Wilson Building, is there a constituency here? Is this a thing? I mean, there was a time when Adrian Fenty was mayor and was having a lot of battles with Vincent Gray, his eventual vanquisher, who was the council chair, and at some point struck a lot of money from the budget for the streetcar. He said he was all for streetcars. He just thought it was like poorly planned and needed more planning. He was right, although that's often an excuse of people who want to kill things. But him doing that led to huge amounts of advocates, flooding the Wilson Building with messages or showing up there to complain. Is there anything like that happening right now?
Not that I can see just yet. And even the council member who represents Ward 7, Wendell Felder, who recently was sworn in this year, he told the Post he was not ready to comment on Bowser's proposal, which is kind of astonishing that the council member for that area not having anything to say about the transit needs of his constituents. But yes, it is funny going back through memory lane. There was a sort of death watch on the streetcar project for a very long time, I think. I don't know. I'm just sad that it never got built to the network that it was supposed to be.
Looking for an AI glow-up that passes the office vibe check? What? AI that only knows the internet doesn't make sense for business. Get AI trained on your data at IBM.com. The AI built for business. IBM.
Are you still quoting 30-year-old movies? Have you said cool beans in the past 90 days? Do you think Discover isn't widely accepted? If this sounds like you, you're stuck in the past. Discover is accepted at 99% of places that take credit cards nationwide. And every time you make a purchase with your card, you automatically earn cash back. Welcome to the now. It pays to Discover. Learn more at discover.com/credit card, based on the February 2024 Nielsen report.
Also this week, at the other end of what was once a streetcar line, Upper Connecticut Avenue, Gordon Ramsay, remember him? British TV figure, had a restaurant for a while at the Wharf. He did a thing on the Parthenon, which is a neighborhood restaurant, a Greek restaurant that didn't fare so well under his withering eye. And this has actually become sort of a news story. What's up with that, Julia?
All right. So Gordon Ramsay has a new TV show. It's called Secret Service. And basically he's looking at all the cameras that are placed in these restaurants to see if there are like health code violations and stuff. His first episode features Parthenon, again, Greek mainstay in Chevy Chase. There was that huge crash outside there a couple months ago, or like a year ago, something like that. Basically, at this restaurant, he found rats, filthy kitchen equipment, a meat saw crawling with bacteria. Although, I don't know, isn't bacteria good for your gut health? Realistically, that kind of does freak me out. But Jessica Sidman,
friend of CityCast,
over at Washingtonian, wrote an article all about Gordon Ramsay's restaurant, so like Hell's Kitchen at the Wharf. Apparently, when the health department of DC visited Hell's Kitchen in a routine inspection in April, they found 11 violations. There was mostly no hot water at several hand washing sinks in the restrooms, no paper towels or hand soap. In the kitchen, some of the cutting boards were heavily damaged with burns and cuts, which means the surfaces aren't cleanable. You can't get the bacteria off, according to the report. There were some other minor violations like unlabeled food containers. They weren't easily recognizable. Basically, there was an unprotected display of unwrapped straws at the bar. All of these got fixed in time. And while the first episode of Ramsay's show is basically focused on Parthenon's kitchen operations, Ramsay also like worked with the staff to mend some of the damaged stuff, right? Like helping them out in certain ways. So maybe that meat saw gets replaced. I don't know. Have any of you eaten at Parthenon and had an experience with the meat saw?
Yeah, I had been before. I was happy with it.
I didn't go to a saw your own meal situation. But wait, isn't the takeaway from what Jess wrote that, like, yes, restaurants, even good ones, acquire health code violations. It's just sort of part of the cost of doing business. And the point of those inspections is that they then, give you a heads up that, like, you better fix this.
Yes. I think if you operate any sort of thing that serves alcohol or serves food, like, you're gonna eventually just get a health code violation. I think that's sort of the nature of the business. At the end of the day, like, there is only management. There isn't really like a hard and fast fix, right? Like a bunch of restaurants that I've been to, you can see outside their doors like rat traps because they're purposely trying to keep stuff away. Point is basically, yes, there are some like minor things that you can fix, like reinvesting in cutting boards or surfaces, or like labeling soap or labeling food. There are, bigger issues where it gets dangerous. And in that case, health inspectors can shut places down. But in this instance, it looks like Parthenon was able to fix most of their stuff. So go have your gyros, have a good time.
And they got into it. I mean, they hosted a watch party and so this was not, they see this as, well, I mean, maybe it's just inevitable. It's going to happen. So you may as well embrace it. But it's not like they are shuddering before this news.
I actually imagine Parthenon did crazy business after this because, it's in people's ears. It's in people's minds. Their view is, we get to go to a famous restaurant now.
I think the show invested $100,000 into the renovations.
Yeah, they did invest. And I don't know how many, meat saws $100,000 buys, but I imagine it's a lot.
I think I'm a lot more likely to eat at Parthenon than Hell's Kitchen in the next few months. So I'll report back.
Fair enough.
And I guess that's all we got to say about that. Listen, today, paid subscribers get a bonus 4th roundup chat. We're going to be talking actually about decline in restaurant spending and other signs of the apocalypse and how seriously we should take them in terms of the health of the city's economy. If you want to be sure you always get the full episode, please become a member. Head to membership.citycast.fm and sign up. It's only $10 a month. And members, we call them CityCast neighbors, get ad-free listening, exclusive membership events, and an extra events newsletter every week. Again, that's membership.citycast.fm. And that is all for today here on CityCast DC. Our production team this week was Priyanka Tilve, Annie Reese, Julia Karen, and Ash Durbin. Newsletter editor Kayla Cote-Stemmerman wrote our fabulous newsletter, Hey DC, this week, and you should subscribe to that, by the way. Our hosts are Bridget Todd and me, Michael Schaefer from Politico. Music is by Alex Roldan, with additional music from Blue Lou and Philip Ayers, from Triple Scoop Music via Getty Images. If you enjoyed the show, why not take one last ride on that streetcar and tell everyone about it while you're riding? We'll be back Monday morning with more news from around the city. Bye.